Welcome to our second G.Y.M.N.O.P video. Make sure to check out last week's on SWAT 4 if you missed it. This week's video is a double feature, where we're going to be looking at two under-remembered gems of yesteryear, Desert Strike and Cannon Fodder. Desert Strike was developed by Electronic Arts back when they made good video games and released in March of 1992. It's a Gulf War era arcade-style game in which the player controls a helicopter, destroying enemy installations, rescuing MIAs, and dodging missiles, all while juggling a dwindling fuel supply and limited ammunition. It features an impressive bit of momentum-based control for the time, but the thing I really want to celebrate today is its sandbox-based level design. We've gotten pretty used to open worlds and freeform gameplay in the modern era, from countless different games and series, games that let you approach a given objective in any style you want. Desert Strike features a now mundane level design with objectives the player can attack in any order. But what's really impressive for the era is that these objectives alter the playfield once destroyed. For example, destroying these radar dishes significantly decreases the range of enemy weapons, while destroying the power station makes the enemy weapons aim more slowly. Side objectives like rescuing MIAs reward the player with more health, and even can unlock bonus characters. The player not only gets the choice of which targets they want to attack and which order, but can strategize around the benefits that destroying these targets offers. It turns a field of objectives into a puzzle that has to be solved. It's not all good. Unfortunately, the game definitely has its rough edges by modern standards. The constantly draining fuel is the biggest issue for me. I admit the game would probably be too easy without it, but I'd prefer if the helicopter could be refueled back at the ship, rather than a limited number of pickups on the map, similar to how refueling works in something like Wings of Fury, or its modern spiritual successor, Rogue Aces. The difficulty can also be a little punishing, forcing the player to memorize a preferred route through the map, rather than untangling the sandbox puzzle. This is made all the more egregious thanks to death not refilling that dwindling supply of fuel or ammo. In a more modern era, I think this would be solved by having the player respawn back at the ship, getting their fuel and ammo back at the cost of having to travel back into the area of operations. Mostly, Desert Strike is a cool game with some cool ideas that could really be expanded upon in the modern era. But we'll get back to that. Let's talk about Cannon Fodder. Cannon Fodder is one of the best games most people have never played. Originally developed by Sensible Software in 1993, it found a new audience when ported to the SNES in 1994. I didn't discover Cannon Fodder until the early aughts, when emulators started to reach a mainstream audience, and I immediately fell in love with it. The game features just an absurd level of cartoon violence. Funny little names for all your soldiers, basic squad tactics, and the best frag grenades outside of Halo 1. I love how you really have to consider river crossings, how the roofs blow off the barracks like an 80s action movie, and how you can hear random shots in the distance, never knowing where another enemy might lurk. But what's really special about Cannon Fodder is death. The thing this game became largely known for was this screen. Chances are, if you've seen any part of Cannon Fodder, it's this. Those graves aren't random. A new one is made every time one of your soldiers dies. Instead of an extra live system, like in most games of the era, Cannon Fodder features a recruit system. After every level, more recruits show up at the gate, ready to be sent off to war. What's more is these recruits are all named and receive promotions at every level. This further serves to get the player attached to them in the same way that XCOM does to modern audiences. Over time, players develop an attachment to these little soldiers and their tiny, fragile lives. This goes beyond simple aesthetics and really adds to the tension of the game. You really feel the pressure when the rockets fly, and it's absolutely crushing when a whole squad gets wiped. It's a brilliant way to satirize war, one of the best I've seen in video games, made all the more impressive by the pixel graphics and technological limitations of the time. The controls can be a little intuitive, but if you have any access to this game, give it a spin for an hour or two. It's well worth your time. But the real reason I wanted to talk about both of these games together is because I want someone to combine them. These games, while great individually, are perfectly situated to be combined together. You can insert your own chocolate and peanut butter metaphor. I would love to see a game where you primarily controlled the helicopter, like Desert Strike, but where with the touch of a button you could drop your squad on the ground and control them directly. Like in Cannon Fodder, you'd be able to switch between these groups at will, and each would be able to defend themselves. To really ratchet up the gameplay possibilities, we could take the sandbox objectives of Desert Strike and raise them to modern standards. Maybe the power plant is hard to get to for the soldiers, but easier for the helicopter, and knocking it out would disable automated turrets or the compound's searchlights, limiting the effectiveness of snipers and making it easier for the ground troops to infiltrate. Or maybe there are radar dishes protected by surface-to-air missiles, making it dangerous for the helicopter to approach, but vulnerable to stealthy ground troops. The options here are virtually endless, allowing the designer to create a clever puzzle box of a level that can be slowly untangled by inspired use of both the helicopter and ground troops. Looking at old games like this is a great way to get inspired when designing modern games, but it's also nice to revisit some of these older classics we may have missed. I never would have spent significant time with either Desert Strike or Cannon Fodder if it hadn't been for the burgeoning emulator scene of the early 2000s. But I'm glad I did, as they're both two pretty cool games worth checking out. So go play Desert Strike and Cannon Fodder, and then make a game mashing them together so I don't have to. If you like this video and want to support the channel, consider picking up my stories on Amazon Kindle or Google Play. There's a wide variety of genres and new stories are uploaded all the time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.